Hello and good morning everyone. I am Junmark and Atay from BS and English 1B. Today I'm going to discuss the noteworthy linguistic timeline from Aristotle to Noam Chomsky. So, let's start. Okay, so our first timeline is from Aristotle. Aristotle from 384 before Christ or before Common Era to 322 before Common Era. So Aristotle developed the first model of communication, in which he called it the Aristotle model of communication. It is a linear communication with focus on public speaking, meaning Aristotle developed a model of communication through a one way of communication. He focused on morely on public speaking, and the audience cannot provide a feedback from the speaker, in which they can't have the interaction between the speaker and the receiver. So there will be no interaction because it is a one way. And he demonstrated the importance of a speaker and their audience during communications. Here you see the 5 components of Aristotle model of communication. So we have the speaker, next is the speech, and yung sa middle of it is the occasions. And we also have next is to the audience, and next is the effect. So okay, let's start. First on our list is the speaker. The speaker is primarily source of the message. They are responsible for delivering it to the audience. The speaker actively construct and present their message, aiming to persuade or to influence the passive audience. Next on our list is the speech. Speech is the message the speaker is delivering to the audience. Speech is the core component referring to the message or content that the speaker delivers to the audience. Aristotle mentioned that Aristotle emphasized that a good speaker must craft their speech to be persuasive, and they should be considering the audience, the occasion, or the desired effect of that specific message. Okay, next on our list is the occasion. Occasion is a situation or context responsible for bringing people together and the reason why communication occurs. Occasion. Occasion refers to the specific time, place, and circumstances in which speech is delivered. It encompasses the event, the environment, and the surrounding context of communication. The occasion influences the message and how it's delivered to the audience. For example, a politician dictates the context. A politician dictates the content and the style of the speech. The speaker must adapt their message to the specific situation because you really can't. And next to our 5 components of Aristotle communication is the audience. Audience is the people who passively listen to the speech as it is delivered. And lastly, the effect, the positive or the negative consequences of the speech. Okay, next on our list is the 3 elements of good public speaker. According to Aristotle, there are 3 elements of a good public speaker. One of that is the ethos. It is relates to the speaker ability, authority, or character. It is like what is the audience needs to hear or to trust the speaker. One of the example of ethos is, for example, a doctor with over 20 years of experience treating heart disease. I can confidently say that this treatment plan offer the best chance of recovery. So by that uh, by that by that the speaker uses the professional credentials and experience to build trust with the audience. That's the ethos in action. Pathos. Pathos is a appeal to emotion, or when a speaker or writer uses pathos, they're trying to persuade the audience by making them feel something such as sympathy, anger, joy, or fear. For example of this, that is that example from a political speech of pathos is that I still remember the look in my father's eyes when he lost his job, the worry, the fear. That's why I'm fighting to make sure no family has to feel that same uncertainty. Now, this pathos effect builds more personal connection and emotional resonance with the working class voters. That is pathos. Stat Logos. Logos is appeal to logic and reasoning. Now, Logos uses facts, statistics, cause and effect reasoning to make a rational case. There's no emotional story, unlike for pathos. Logos is just a data and logic that support the conclusion. For example, studies by the American Academy of Pediatrics shows that teenager needs 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night for optimal health. However, most high schools start before 8 a.m., making it nearly impossible for a student to get enough rest. Schools that have been moved start times to 8:30 or later have seen improved attendance, higher test scores, and better overall student well-being. Therefore, adjusting the school starts time is scientifically supported way to improve academic performance and health. And that is Logos. Logos uses the logic and reasoning to make people persuade. Okay. Robert Loth and the Prescriptive Grammar of 1710 to 1787. In the history of English language, few figures have had lasting an impact as Robert Loth, an 18th century bishop and a scholar whose work helped shape modern view on grammar and correctness. Through his influential book, A Short Introduction to English Grammar of 1762, Loth played a central role in establishing prescriptive grammar, a set of strict rules governing how English should be spoken and written. He attempted to establish rules defining referred or correct usage of language, spelling, pronunciation, and vocabulary, syntax, and semantics. It often constructed with a descriptive approach. Prescriptive grammar is based on the belief that language follow fixed standard of correctness, unlike descriptive grammar, which aims to record and analyze how language is actually used. Prescriptive grammar dictates what is right and wrong. Loth's grammar book was written at a time when English lacked a standardized set of rules, and his goal was to bring order and logic to the language. In doing so, he often drew upon Latin grammar as a model for English, believing that English should follow similar structure to appear more refined and rational. Some Loth's most famous grammatical rules include prohibition against ending a sentence with a preposition, avoiding double negatives, and not splitting infinitives. For example, he would correct the common phrase to boldly go to go boldly, believing the former to be grammatical incorrect because it split the infinitive to go. These rules were not always based on actual English usage but rather on what Loth and the other of his time considered more logical or elegant. Loth's work greatly influenced how grammar taught in school for centuries. Even today, Many of his prescriptive rules are still taught despite being questioned or rejected by modern linguistics. Contemporary language scholars argue that Lowth's approach was too rigid and failed to account for the natural evolution of language and regional variation. Nonetheless, his influence remains visible on both education system and public attitudes towards proper English. Sir William Jones of 1746 to 1794, a British philologist and a scholar of ancient India, is widely recognized for his pioneering contribution to Oriental studies. One of his influential works is a grammar of the Persian language, first published in 1771. This work stands as a cornerstone in the Western understanding and study of the Persian language and showcased Jones' broader intellectual engagement with the language and culture of Asia. Okay. Persian was no ordinary language. It was the tongue of empire, poets, and philosophers, from the lush courts of the Mughal empires in the India to majestic palace of Persia itself. Persia poetry flowed like honey, weaving tales of love, mysticism, and valor. Yet most Europeans of the time, this language was an enigma, a cryptic code wrapped in a beautiful script. William Jones no mali. Sir William Jones is famously credited with one of the most extraordinary linguistic discovery of the 18th century, the affinity between Sanskrit, Latin, and Greek, the other European language. This insight laid the foundation of the modern study of the comparative linguistics and transformed how scholars understood the history of language. It said it is one of the best grammar texts ever published in English about language the Western world considered exotic. He also proposed that Sanskrit's affinity to Greek and Latin could be explained by positing a common earlier source, one known today as Indo-European. Ferdinand de Saussure is from 1857 to 1913. He said that language is arbitrary. He argued that the sign was composed of both signified an abstract concept or idea, and a signifier, a perceived sound and visual image. Because different languages have different words to describe the same object or concept, there is no intrinsic reason why a specific sign is used to express a given signifier. It is thus arbitrary. Ferdinand de Saussure, as a Swiss linguist of the late 19th and early 20th century, revolutionized the study of language with his groundbreaking idea that language is arbitrary. According to him, language is made up of signs, each consisting of two parts, the signifier and the word or sound itself, and the signified, the concept or the meaning of the word represent. Importantly, Ferdinand emphasized the relationship between the signifier and the signified is not natural or logical but entirely arbitrary. For example, the word tree has no inherent connection to the object. It refers to it simply a sound that English speakers have agreed upon to represent that concept. This arbitrariness becomes especially clear when we compare different languages. The same object is called tree in English, arbre in French, and baum in German. These words sound completely different and share no natural link to the object itself, illustrating that the relationship between word and meaning depends on social convention rather than any intrinsic connection. Saussure might incite challenged the earlier views of language that naturally mirrors reality of the words have fixed meaning, shifting the focus instead to how language function as a system of a sign that gain meaning through their difference and relations. The application of social theory were profound. His idea laid the foundation of structuralism, which, which studies language as a system of interconnected signs rather than isolated words. This approach encouraged linguists to explore underlying rules and structure of language. Beyond linguistics, social concepts influence fields such as anthropology, philosophy, and literary theory, prompting new questions about how language shapes culture, thoughts, and perception. By revealing the arbitrary nature of language, Ferdinand opened up a new way of understanding communication as a social and cultural phenomenon. In conclusion, Ferdinand's concept that a language is arbitrary transformed our understanding of how words and meaning relate by showing that the link between signifier and signified is based on convention rather than nature. He paved the way for modern linguistic theory and structural analysis. His ideas remain influential today, shaping how we think about language, meaning, and human interactions. Noam Chomsky, a native theory of language acquisition, argues that the ability to learn language is innate to humans, meaning we are born with natural biological capacity for language. He proposed the concept of universal grammar, a set of fundamental principles and structures shared by all language, hardwired into human brain. According to him, this explains why children can quickly and effortlessly learn complex language without explicit instruction even when exposed to limited or imperfect language input. His theory challenged earlier behaviorist views, which claims that language is learned only through imitation or reinforcement. Chomsky's nativist perspective shifted the study of language towards understanding the underlying mental structure that make language learning possible, highlighting the deep connection between language and human cognition.